Hey everybody, this is TJR. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is something new for me. After my recent trip to Barcelona, Spain, I decided I wanted to try my hand at a travel log video. And I hope you enjoy this. If you are a first-time visitor, I normally talk about music and other aspects of popular culture on this channel. So you might want to check out some of the other videos here. Otherwise, though, I just want to give you a quick heads up. Because this video is longer than a lot of the videos I normally do, I have put timestamps underneath the more information section here on the video. You can check that out below. And if there's a particular topic you want to click onto, you can skip right to it. But whether you choose to skip around or whether you choose to watch the whole thing, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Thanks again for stopping by. And here's the video. This is TJR.
And this is Superfan.
And we are going to talk about our recent trip to Spain.
Yes.
Yes, and we're going to discuss a number of topics on this, share some of our experiences, and hopefully you will find this both entertaining and educational. Right now, traveling can be a bit more difficult than normal because of the COVID crisis.
Yes.
And so we'll start this by just first discussing the requirements to get into Spain.
Yeah, it was pretty simple and straightforward. Spain has a website that's called Spain Travel Health. They also have an app. And basically what you have to do is provide proof of vaccination and state under the penalty of perjury that you have no symptoms for, I believe, a week or 2 weeks prior to your travel date. It was very simple. We sent our QR code for our proof of vaccination. They sent us a QR code that we showed. They had a special area set up. It was a line that you had to stand in. Basically, it wasn't a line. We just walked up, they scanned our code and said, thank you, bye.
Yep, that was it. Very fast and easy. Probably the easiest part in regards to the whole flight and everything, because, you know, we're flying in economy, and so that's, most people who traveled in economy know that that's pretty uncomfortable when it's like a flight this long.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17 to 18 hours or something along those lines. I wasn't counting.
Well, the flight, we flew from LAX to New Jersey. Newark, and then from Newark we had a short layover, a couple hours before we boarded the flight to Spain, which was an overnight flight, a red-eye, and we left at about 7 o'clock in the evening and got there 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, right around there. You're right. And so, so once we got to Spain, after that rather enjoyable plane flight, yes. We got settled in. And so let's talk about accommodations.
Yeah, and we did take. Barcelona has a super easy bus from the airport. It dropped us off literally like half a block from
where we were staying.
It was super easy. It was like $5 a piece, €5 a piece.
€5. If you hear us say dollars or bucks, we're talking euros.
Yeah. And, okay. One of the nice things about this trip, we'll just touch on it now, was that the euro is like 16, maybe 20 cents more than the dollar. But at least here in California, it kind of balanced out because tax is included in the cost of everything, as opposed to here where they add sales tax onto every purchase. So it kind of balanced out.
Yes.
Euro to dollar.
One thing I will say, though, every time we used a credit card to pay for something, which was 98% of the time, when we were handed a machine to tap or insert our cards with, there was always this question, euros or dollars. And pay close attention to that, because depending on where things are at the time you go, you might see that the euro says less and the dollar says more.
Well, they always charge a fee for that, too.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing, the card that we used is a travel card. There are no transaction fees.
That's right. There were no transaction fees on the card we used.
You know, for the exchange rate, it's just the exchange rate straight up. So,
but aside from those fees, it was very clear that if we used euros, or if we chose US dollars, we ended up getting charged a little bit more
yes,
than if we chose euros. So naturally, of course, we looked at the screen, we read it, and we chose euros because that was the cheaper way to go. So just pay attention to that.
And I would say
anytime you're in Europe.
I would say that that's true 95% of the time.
Okay.
If not more.
So just always pay attention to that. So we settled in. We stayed at an Airbnb, and I got to compliment you, Superfan, for just finding a great apartment for us to stay in. We prefer this over hotels. It's oftentimes, in fact, I think it's always been cheaper.
Yeah, for the most part. It depends on how long you're staying. The longer you stay, you tend to get a little bit better rate.
Okay.
We, I believe, paid $145 a night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing.
And when you see the pictures or the video that I think we'll probably post a separate video.
I don't know if we'll post a separate video, but I mean, I'm going to show it right now as we're talking about it. But we had a really nice little apartment with a kitchen, with a washing machine to do laundry with. We
had an elevator in the building.
Had an elevator in the building. Had a dishwasher, so if we wanted to cook, we could.
Yeah.
But we also had a wonderful balcony all to ourselves.
Yeah, it was huge. It was twice the size of the actual apartment.
Yeah, it was very big. I was really surprised when we were shown around and we were told this is all for you. And the view was amazing, and you're going to see pictures of this as we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But this was just a really nice. This is why we always go with Airbnb. I think you can have a much better experience where you're staying. You live right there amongst. You're not living. When you're living in a hotel, you're not experiencing the culture quite as much. I think you've got this kind of bubble around you. Whereas if you're just living in the same building where other people are living. You're home, and you're experiencing more of the culture. You're
experiencing the neighborhood.
Yeah, the neighborhood, and I just think overall it works better.
And it's more comfortable. You have your kitchen. You have more privacy than you do in a hotel.
Yeah, I would agree. You do have more privacy. Yeah. So there was that, and so before we start talking about what we did and saw out there. Let's talk briefly about transportation, getting around the city.
Yeah.
Normally speaking, when we've gone to other European countries, we have always used their metro and their buses. We bought passes and just used that exclusively. And, of course, you walk around a lot, too.
Yeah.
In Spain, you do walk around a lot. We definitely did. But this time, we used the taxis.
Almost exclusively
for transportation.
Yeah.
And what we discovered is that while they didn't have Uber and Lyft like they did in other European countries, their taxis were relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, cheaper than taking Uber or Lyft here, for sure.
Yeah, and we generally would take a taxi and we might spend, on average, maybe €5 to €6. On average. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more.
Exactly. The one place that I wouldn't recommend using the taxis is to and from the airport, because it's a flat $40, and I think that if time goes on, if it's a longer term ride, if there's traffic, whatever,
it's going to be more.
It's going to be more.
Yeah, €40. So versus the €5 to take the bus.
Yeah,
and so that's a no-brainer. But yeah, this was indifferent for us. We realized that the taxis, we weren't expecting this, but we realized the taxis were just so inexpensive.
Yeah, and I had kind of planned on doing the bus pass. Normally when I plan a trip like this, I get to know kind of the area in a map. Do research that way, because that's something that I enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. It's part of the planning for a trip, Granted, our first European trip, we did London, we did Paris, we did Dublin, and it had been a long time coming. And I had done a lot of that planning.
Yeah, you have. And I do want to commend you for the great planning you've done. Your research has always made our trips work out a whole lot better.
Yeah, and a lot of that credit actually goes to Rick Steves because he has it down.
Yeah, you learned a lot from just reading his books and from watching his show. And, of course, there were lots of...
And it helped you, too.
It did help me, too. And, of course, nowadays you also watch a lot of other travel bloggers and learn tips from them.
Yeah, another travel blogger that we watched, actually the only one that we kind of watched for Barcelona was Patrick Guides Barcelona. And he has a YouTube channel. We'll put a link to it below. Really, really good tips. Yeah. Helped a lot for me with the COVID stuff because it was a little daunting to go on that website, but he did numerous videos, and every time there was a change within 24 hours, he was on there posting things, and that was a big help.
Yeah, and so we definitely say that if you're even not just Barcelona, but any place you're thinking of going, check to see what YouTubers may be blogging about that country and traveling to that country on a regular basis, because there are probably others like him that do similar things. So now, and a lot of the thing about getting around the city is also just, of course, the language. Neither of us really speak Spanish. Many European countries, you'll find a lot of people, especially in a city like Barcelona, where we stayed, and people, there's a lot of tourists. There's going to be a lot of people who know English, especially when you go to shops or stores, that sort of thing. There's going to be a fair amount
in the touristy areas, yes. And that's where we were most of the time. Mostly.
But you shouldn't rely on people speaking English. No. And also, you should be respectful. If someone walks up to me and just starts speaking Spanish, I feel kind of insulted. If they do that. If they just walk up to me here in Southern California and just start speaking Spanish, expecting me to know it, and not even trying to speak a little English, I feel a little insulted. Well, they're the same way.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same. I get that sometimes, too, not as much as you do. Because I'm the whitest person in the world and you're not. Well,
I'm the whitest Mexican in the world.
You are.
But at any rate, though...
I still like you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I still like you, too. And the other thing is so you should really try to do like in any European country, like when we went to France, learning a few words, some useful phrases goes a long way, especially for things you're going to do a lot of, like ask, how much is this? Where is the restroom? Do you have, because you're going to be ordering food, you're going to be, do you have, tienes una, hopefully I haven't forgotten how to say these things, but I took a semester of Spanish when I was in junior college ages ago, and I lost all of it because I never got to practice it, but I probably did more Spanish during the 8 or 9 days we were there versus that whole semester in college. But just try to learn some useful phrases. I took a little app. There was a translator app, and I kept feeding myself common phrases that I knew I was going to use, learned how to use them. And then whatever words I had to add in, because I'm going to ask for maybe coffee or something like that. But just a little bit of that goes a long way. And they know that you're not a native speaker. They can tell. But they appreciate, I think most of all, more often than not, they appreciate that you made the attempt.
They appreciate the effort. Yeah.
And at one point, we even had an experience where we had to speak to somebody and he didn't know any English. We spoke we spoke a little bit of Spanish. Then we pulled out our translator apps and showed him some of the more complex stuff we needed to ask. He pulled out his translator app and started replying with what he wanted to tell us. And we just did this back and forth. So
we were swapping phones.
Thank goodness for cell phones.
It was great. And it actually was one of the more memorable interactions that we had on this trip. Yeah. And I kind of think that it amused him too.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, that's another thing about just getting around the city is try to use a little bit of the language. Try your best. Learn how to say simple things like, pardon, for excuse me, things like that. Just learn how to just learn a few things.
One other thing is when we arrive in a country, there are certain things we don't bring. Umbrellas. I'm not going to pack an umbrella. You know, if we need one between the bus stop and our
departure
Airbnb, then we run fast and hope our jackets don't leak.
Yeah, hope so. But the things that we don't pack, because throughout Europe there is the European version of Target, which is Primark.
Yeah, it's kind of a cross between JCPenney's and Target.
We can go there to pick up if there's anything else that we think we might need after we've gotten there.
Umbrellas.
Like umbrellas, which we're never going to pack. If you forgot your toothpaste or your toothbrush, just things like that.
They have that.
Yeah, they have. I mean, they're just going to have everything you might need.
Basic toiletries. They have flip-flops if you're going to the beach or a pool.
If you screw up your clothes,
you can buy them there, and they're inexpensive.
They're very inexpensive, yeah. If you find you need I didn't pack a sweater and I need one, you can get a sweater for cheap.
Yeah, very good quality, very inexpensive.
Yeah. But anyways, we just want to bring that up. We don't want to sound like a commercial for them, but we just wanted to mention that that's a good resource while you're out and abroad. If you're in a European country, because they do have them, pretty much every European country we've been to has them. So now let's talk about what we saw. Let's talk about attractions.
We saw a lot of amazing things.
Yeah, we did. We got a little list here. First thing is probably for me was the greatest thing we saw, the biggest thing we saw.
And it was the first thing we really went to.
It was the first thing we went to. On our first full day, this was the first thing we went with. The destination we had was we saw Sagrada Familia, which is, and if you're not aware of it, we'll of course going to show you some pictures, but it is a cathedral that is under construction. It will be completed in 2025. Superfan, do you want to discuss any details about it real quick?
It's an amazing cathedral.
It's massive.
It
rises above all the other buildings in the city. Yeah. When you walk inside, it looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. There are parts of it that almost look like it was designed by aliens from another world when you're inside of it. It's beautiful. It's breathtaking. There are no amount of pictures I could take that could possibly describe the impressiveness of what I saw, what you saw. And I remember we got up that morning, we walked to a little cafe close by, we got coffee and croissant, and I remember when I caught my first glimpse of it, and we stood up and watched. I took a picture, and then we caught the full view of it, and I said to you, this was worth, just this side alone was worth the entire 17, 18-hour plane trip. Made it all worth it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say about it. And we're showing you some pictures so you can kind of get an idea.
There was an architect earlier. It was taken over a year in by Antoni Gaudi.
Mm-hmm. Who we'll be talking about more in a moment.
Yeah, he was kind of at the forefront of Modernismo, which is kind of Art Nouveau. It very influenced, by nature.
Yes,
as you can see in the pictures.
It's architecture influenced by nature. And we took a guided tour, which wasn't that much more expensive than the admission, and I would recommend the guided tour.
Yeah, it's not a cheap ticket. It was, I want to say $28 per. To me, that was
not expensive for what we saw.
It was like literally $1 or $2 more.
To have the guided tour. Yeah, so guided tour was well worth it. And after the guided tour is over, it's not super long, but after the guided tour is over,
hour.
Yeah, after that's over with, you can stay and walk around and look around as much as you want, take as many pictures as you want. Yeah. And we took tons of pictures, but like I said, no amount of pictures we could ever take could ever begin to describe how awe-inspiring this is.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the only...
On so many different levels.
Yeah. This wasn't the only piece of architecture we saw by Gaudi.
Yeah. No.
We also saw, and hopefully I say these right, Casa Mila.
Yes.
And Casa Batlló.
Batlló.
Thank you for your help with that. And then there's, if I say it right, Parc Güell.
Parc Güell.
Parc Güell. Thank you.
It's spelled Guell.
Parc Güell. You're pronouncing the Spanish better than me. So
yeah,
what is
that? You spoke it better than me while we were there. So.
Okay, well, all right. You're making up for lost time.
Slightly.
So let's talk a little bit about these three other attractions by Gaudi. These were residences that are no longer residences now. They are basically
they're museums.
Museums of this artist architecture. I mean, it's architecture, but it's also art. And again, we're showing pictures now. You're seeing architecture influenced by nature. You're seeing...
It is definitely art. Especially Casabatto, I think. I had heard about it, and some people said it was a little hokey, but it was presented as speaking to you about its history and the people who lived there. Interesting and well presented, and an unusual way to tell the story of the house. These were
like basically living communities that were designed, and at one time they were living communities where people had residents. There were actually residents there.
Well, Park Güell was a planned community. It was supposed to be a planned private community, like a gated community in a park. Casa Milà and Casa Batlló were homes, private residences.
Okay.
Well,
weren't some of them apartment complexes?
Casa Milà was apartments, and Casa Batlló was a private residence.
And we toured all of these, and they were beautiful. They were breathtaking.
And the roofs were amazing.
Yeah, and many of them we would go on top. There were a couple of them where we'd end up on the roofs at the end of it.
Yeah. And
had these magnificent views. There was one of them where at the end we went back downstairs. I think we took a little elevator. Casa Batlló. And then we were guided into like a little room. And we didn't understand what this was, but we were guided into this little room with all these other people. And it was just like an empty square you were walking into. And the doors closed. And then I remember you looked at me.
There was no other door.
There were no other doors. It was almost like we were being trapped inside of a cube. And you looked at me and you said, "This is the part where they gas us." And instead, there was this projection show that was unbelievable. And it was this projection art show. It was a tribute to Gaudi, but it was also I remember you're watching some video of it. Had I known they were going to do this, I would have started my phone camera right away. But it happened, and all of a sudden, at first, I was just kind of immersed in what was happening, and then I thought, "Oh, pull out your phone and film this. You got to film this." And so you're seeing what I did film.
It was kind of acid trip.
I remember I said, "Yeah, I guess the acid's kicking in right now." But that's what it felt like. But this was totally unexpected that they would do this, and it kind of blew our minds, and it was really cool.
And actually, there was another little art exhibit walkthrough area at the beginning as well. That was.
But it wasn't as mind blowing as that ending.
No, it was kind of Alice in Wonderland-y, I would say.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Those were the three Gaudi, I guess the four Gaudi installations, including Sagrada Familia. And these are well recommended to go check out. Another great site we saw was the Picasso Museum.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, never that into Picasso.
A lot of the art was younger Picasso.
This was a great experience, this museum. I mean, you got to see, of course, the art that he's most famous for, the more abstract art, but you also got to see more of his realistic art and understand that he could, and there was a lot of it, that he could paint realistically, but that he began to slowly develop this style where he moved away from realism.
Well, he himself said, when I was a child, I learned to paint as an adult. And as an adult, I learned to paint as a child.
Yeah.
And that kind of sums it up.
Yeah. And I began to develop a bigger appreciation for his art, including his abstract art. Because some of the abstract art was quite stylish looking and quite bold and vibrant, in my opinion. Some of it that I'd never seen before. But yeah, so we visited the Picasso Museum. That was a really good experience. We took a walking tour of the Gothic Quarter, and we just used a Rick Steves podcast.
Yeah.
And why don't you talk a little about what the Gothic Quarter is?
The Gothic Quarter is the original core of Barcelona. It was started as a Roman village.
These are very old buildings, and people still live there.
In the way back times.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, especially walking through it at night. We did the walking tour, but then we also, there were a lot of other nights we just walked around.
Yeah, we just wandered around
and looked for shops. Got lost. Well, we didn't get lost. Luckily we had cell phones, or we would have been lost.
Well,
but I know what you're saying.
We wandered.
Yeah, just looked around.
With no destination in mind, which...
And you'd walk through these, especially at night. Sometimes you'd look down, and it was like, it almost looked a little spooky. But then you start to walk in, and you'd see people shopping, stores open.
Yeah, restaurants.
Little restaurants. Like it might look a little scary when you first look down the corner, but then you start walking through, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the enjoyable things about Barcelona is things are open later.
Mm-hmm. Yes, things are open later because people have siesta.
Yeah, and that did affect some of our trip. Not a lot. But you have to be prepared for the fact that during certain parts of the day, a lot of places are going to be closed. Yeah, a lot of places closed from like 12 or 1 to 3.
It's 3 or 4 sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, walking tour of the Gothic Quarter. Another thing we went to was the Boqueria.
The Boqueria Marketplace.
And also the Santa
Caterina Marketplace.
The
Boqueria is the more touristy one. I would say that probably 50 to 60% of their business there is tourists or locals bringing their friends. Santa Caterina is more of a local market. Yeah, we had kind of an interesting interaction at Santa Caterina Marketplace too, because there was a vendor who had a pigeon stuck in one of his glass cases.
Yes, and he couldn't get him out.
And
you helped.
I helped.
You helped shoo it out. Yes.
I scared it out from
the other side because you were there.
Glass.
It was there. You were there, and he was finally able because he was trying to get it out with a broom, and the pigeon just would not get out. He kept going the opposite way.
Yeah.
And you kind of scared it by just kind of like.
Then he got out and he was able to shoo it away
by just kind of like jumping towards the glass and making sudden movements towards the glass, and it finally went the opposite way. Yeah, and he appreciated you, the store owner.
Yeah.
And he didn't speak any English at all.
But we just laughed.
Yeah, you both just kind of laughed about it and just whatever. And but yeah, that was.
He said thank you, and
yeah, he did, and so that was a fun little interaction. Another thing we did, which we have done in every European country we've ever gone to, and they've all had this. It's called the hop-on, hop-off bus.
Yes,
which is a very touristy thing.
It doesn't get more touristy than that. But that being said, and this is a Rick Steves recommendation as well. It takes you to all the places you want to go.
Yeah,
and you can hop off. And you can hop back on when you're ready to go to the next spot.
Yeah.
But you can also, and there was a day where it was supposed to rain, and it did quite a bit. And we just took the bus, and we took the full loop, and we didn't get off. One thing I will say about the Barcelona bus that we haven't run into in other cities is, because we've done them in Dublin, London, Paris.
Yeah.
They only go in one direction, as in Barcelona, as opposed to
other countries.
The others that I mentioned, at least they have stops on both sides of the street, and
they have 2 directions.
Yeah, they're going opposite loop.
Uh-huh.
They've got opposite loops going. So, like, we wanted at one point to get to somewhere that was closer to Sagrada Familia, and we would have had to ride for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up walking. Which is fine, And I would say we averaged 7-8 miles a day in walking.
Easily, yeah, we did.
And yeah.
But the hop-on, hop-off bus, we didn't do it every single day. We only did it 2 days.
Yeah, we did buy a 2-day pass. It was, I think, $36 for 2 days. It was really good.
One thing about the hop-on, hop-off bus is you can kind of get a good lay of the land.
Yeah, it's a good lay of the land. It shows you where all the basics are.
In some countries, we used it just to get familiarized on the first day, maybe.
Yeah. For example, in Paris, we wanted to get up near Montmartre and...
Get near where?
Montmartre in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And we took the bus out there and then caught the funicular up to the top of the hill. But these buses go to all the touristy spots, which is where we're going. So it's very convenient. It was a little less convenient here, and I don't know that I would buy a 2-day pass I would recommend a 2-day pass unless you need it, but it was a great way to get, and there are 2 different loops that you can take as well.
So now, after that, we also went to Barcelona Cathedral.
Yes.
Which is, I think, the oldest cathedral in Barcelona. I
believe so, yes.
Yes. I think it was christened sometime in the year 900 or in the 900s, roughly.
Yeah, it's about 900.
Approximately, I don't know the exact year, but yeah, around the 900s. That's pretty darn early.
And I think before that it was a Roman temple as well.
Yeah,
so
and it's not Sagrada Familia, of course, but it is still very beautiful and impressive to look at.
Yeah.
To walk around in. One little interaction we had there that I thought was particularly funny was the day we tried to go there, we called a taxi. And of course, what we would do is you would always ask them, you would just tell them where you want to go. And you would say Barcelona Cathedral. And he didn't understand. And we struggled for a little bit. And then you pulled out your phone and you just showed him
a picture.
The picture and it said Barcelona Cathedral. And he said, oh, Barcelona Cathedral. Cathedral versus cathedral.
Yeah.
And I remember later on you said, I think he was just messing with us.
Oh, well, yeah.
He's allowed.
Yeah. I wasn't doing my good Spanish, so I guess that's...
I think you were assuming English at that point. Anyways, but yeah.
I said 2 words.
Well, that's all you said. Yeah, Barcelona Cathedral. But at any rate, though, I still think that was pretty funny. We also went to the Santa Maria del Mar Church.
Yes.
Which is another very ancient structure.
Closer to the beach.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
And there are a number of cathedrals you can go see out in Barcelona. And they're all
super windy stairs.
Yeah, they're all worth seeing. Oh yeah, the super windy. Yeah, super windy. That was the one where we went upstairs, right?
Yeah, that was the one.
That's right. If you're willing to pay the little donation, they'll let you go upstairs.
Yeah.
And you walk up this really narrow, tiny, winding stairs that might give you a sense of vertigo.
Yeah, the picture like a wrought iron staircase, like the old-fashioned wrought iron staircase, and then narrow it down by like 1.5 feet. If that's what you're dealing with.
And it's all going in like a circular motion up. It's like something in a Dr. Seuss book, I think, is the way I would describe it. But yeah, there was this, you could kind of get a feeling of vertigo going up and down it, you know. So there was that. We went to the Catalan Museum of Art.
Yes.
A wonderful art museum. Lots of impressive paintings. Lots of impressive, how shall I say, more modernismo furniture.
Yes.
Design work, that type of thing. Really, really tremendous. Just, I'm like I said, going to show you some pictures here of some of the paintings that we saw. There's one picture I want to show that I took of this painting that depicts a huge battle scene. And it actually turned out to be lucky that there was someone sitting in front of the painting, just center, that lets you really take in the scale of it. We also went to, and hopefully I said this correctly, Palais de la Musica. Palau, thank you. Palau de la Musica. And
that was another guided tour.
This is basically a concert venue.
Yes.
And it's still in use.
Same period as Sagrada Familia. Sagrada Familia, by the way, is a cathedral that was built in the past 100 years. A different architect did the Palau de la Musica, but once again, very beautiful, very Art Nouveau.
Yeah, and we just toured it. We didn't see any concerts there, hear any concerts. We just toured it, and it was astounding just to see it from the inside and look around it. That was after a lot of walking through the Gothic Quarter and just exploring.
Then we walked around more after that as well.
We sure did. And of course, if you're going to walk around a lot, you're going to get very hungry. And so now we're going to talk about food. Yes. And food in Barcelona, Spain, was very good and very reasonable. There were many, many cafes where you could get really good food, inexpensively priced.
Very fresh.
Very fresh. There were fast food places. There were many American fast food places. But there were also, of course, fast food chains that were unique to Barcelona, which we also visited a few of those too. There was Starbucks all over the place as well. We did try, of course, a lot of the coffee there in Spain.
Yeah.
But we did go to Starbucks a couple times. We discovered at Starbucks in Spain that they make fresh orange juice. They have the machine right there, and it's amazing orange juice. And that's something I don't see here, at least not in Southern California.
No.
And I remember telling the girl at the counter that, saying that, we don't have this in the U.S. And she said, you don't have orange juice? I said, well, we don't have fresh orange juice like this at a Starbucks. They just don't do this, and she was kind of surprised. That's Starbucks. But let's talk a little bit more about, first of all, coffee in Spain.
Well, one of the places we went was El Magnifico, and it was fantastic.
Overall, I was very pleased. The coffees were smaller, but they were also a lot less expensive than, say, going to Starbucks. And in some cases, they were pretty powerful.
Yes.
I would have a coffee, and I would say about 45 minutes later, okay, I'm good. I don't need any more for the rest of the day, or at least not till a lot later. You could feel the heart palpitations coming on in some cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very interesting, very good.
The highlight of the food, I think, was the churros and chocolate.
Oh, yes. There were a couple places that we found that were literal hole in the walls for churros and chocolate, where basically they're making these fresh made churros. They're smaller than we're used to seeing them here in the U.S.
They're more donut-y.
Somewhat, the more donut-y, I guess. But I don't like the word donut because to me it just gives such a negative connotation. I hate donuts. But these were quite good. They're not super sugary. And of course, you can buy these little hot chocolate, which is not like hot chocolate here where it's a lot of milk. This is just hot chocolate.
Yeah, it's more like a pudding. You'll see in the video clips we're putting in here.
Texturally, it's more like a pudding, but
really super good.
Yeah. A lot of these chocolates, you would basically, it's the closest you can get to an out of body experience. Yeah. Without a hallucinogenic. Some of these hot chocolates.
And you can get it. There are multiple ways. We tended to go with the Spanish traditional and the Swiss,
which comes with whipped cream, which was house made, and of course you dip really the churros in the chocolate. Yeah. But there were some really amazing places that we had that for. Lots of places selling pizza, sandwiches, hamburgers. Lots of the cafes are selling those type of things. Yeah. Just
one that kind of stood out the first night was Vienna.
That was a Barcelona fast food chain.
Yeah,
that we saw there.
There were a few of them around.
Where their hamburgers were much better than our fast food hamburgers, in my opinion.
Oh, way better.
Yeah, because I don't even eat I can't even touch fast food hamburgers anymore. I can't even, I'll only eat a hamburger if it's like at a really good place where it's grass-fed beef. And by and large, I just can't even stomach fast food hamburgers. I just can't. And these were quite good.
Yeah. It was very tasty. Yeah. I kind of feel like it was a combination of pork and beef.
It might have been. It had a unique flavor to it, and I think that might have been the reason why.
But it's also not as processed as American food.
Yeah, it didn't taste that way at all. There was another fast food place that I like called Las Migas that had served focaccia pizzas. And they would have all these different focaccia pieces freshly made that day. And you just ask for a slice, and they'd give you this huge slice. Well, they didn't give it to you, you'd buy it. And then you could order coffee or soda or whatever you wanted to have with it. Yeah. That was one of the few places in Spain, besides Starbucks, where I could get a mocha. Because usually most of the cafes you're going to, they don't serve mocha. It's just it's coffee or cafe con leche, cafe or cafe con leche, coffee with milk.
I think that if you went to like El Magnifico had a mocha, and it was very good.
Okay. Yeah, a few places did, but by and large, that was not a common thing like it is here in the U.S.
I think that the straight-up coffee bars would tend to have that, but not necessarily a cafe.
So there was that. But but food was very, very reasonably priced. By and large, I don't think we ever spent more than $5 to $8 per person for a meal.
Yeah.
By and large. Sometimes less, sometimes a little more. We went to one nice sit-down restaurant.
And we had paella.
It had paella. And I expected that bill to be a lot more expensive, and it was like less than $50. It was like about $45 maybe.
Yeah, and we didn't have alcohol with our meal.
That probably helped, yeah. But I know that would have been a lot more. What we had would have been a lot more expensive in the U.S. had we done
Definitely.
Had we done it there. But that was. And then there was one really amazing place called Champagnat, which was another little hole in the wall. Champagnat, thank you. Where they serve tapas and they make their own champagne.
And we did have alcohol there. And
we did taste it. And I don't like alcohol. I'm not an alcohol drinker, but I'll admit I tasted this champagne and it was delicious.
And it was $2 a glass.
$2 a glass, yep. And we had tapas, and they had extremely good tapas.
Pork pluma was fantastic.
Wonderful dishes. It sounds like we talked about food more than we did attractions. So,
I think one of the most enjoyable meals in addition to
it's an important part of the experience too. What you're doing,
the pizzas. There was a little pizza place behind Barcelona Cathedral.
Another little hole in the wall. They don't even have seating. You just go up and order your pizza.
And they were like $5 a piece?
Exactly. And they put a little box for you. I asked them, do you have any napkins? They pulled out some paper towels and some industrial paper towels and just tore them off and handed them to us. And we sat behind Barcelona Cathedral and ate the pizzas.
And there were some street performer. There was a street performer, a woman singing opera. It just was a really pleasant place to sit and have a little picnic.
It was incredibly pleasant.
On a bench.
Yeah, and those are moments you just can't really plan for. They just kind of happen. You happen to be in the area, you're hungry, you look for something to eat, there's the little pizza place, you sit down and there just happens to be a street performer singing opera. And it's very nice. And this you can't plan those things. They just happen.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked about that, I think one thing we want to talk about was usually in Europe, pickpockets are kind of a common thing, a common crime you have to be careful of. And in our research, we heard that Barcelona is notorious for pickpockets, and you really have to be careful. And of course, I will stress this, we had money belts under our clothes.
Yes.
I kept a little tiny zipper coin purse that carried the primary credit card I would use, and that was in a zippered pocket on the inside of my coat. And when I need to pay for something, I'd unzip that pocket, pull it out, get the card, put it back in the pocket, zip it up. And we both did similar things to not be obvious targets to pickpockets, be a victim of that crime.
Yeah, and we put little crampon hooks on the back of our
backpack. Yeah, so that it was hard to open it up.
We could seal them.
Yeah, that way someone couldn't come up from behind and just open it. If, say, we weren't paying attention, they couldn't just unzip it. It would be impossible for them to do that.
So, wore jeans with the back pocket buttoned.
I didn't keep anything in my back pockets. Always kept the phone in a side pocket inside the coat.
And that's something, if the harder you make it for them, the more they're going to look for somebody who's easy.
Who's easy, exactly. And that's kind of our best advice.
And I tend to wear tunic tops that are longer and cover my pocket. And then the jacket, it covers that. And the pockets that I have things in are always zipped. You just have to, and you have to be aware of your surroundings. In wandering around the areas that we were in, they had a lot of different little artisanal shops. I think the funniest one we saw was the poopers, for lack of a better word.
There was this shop that sold nothing but these little plastic figures of various either famous people,
celebrities,
or fictional characters bending over and pooping with their pants down. And I know that sounds like really gross, but they're just so comical. They're so cartoony and comical. I do have some photos I'll show. But this could be everything from the President of the United States to Batman bending over and pooping.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that store was called.
I have no idea, but there were more than one. There was more than one.
There were multiple locations, yeah. And we just called them the pooper stores. And they just sold these things as novelty items. We didn't buy one. No. I honestly couldn't buy one, but it was just so bizarre to see this store. And there were a lot of places like that. You're right.
There was a store that just sold beans, all they had was 50 different kinds of beans. They had dry beans, they had wet beans, they had beans on a steam table that you could buy right there. They had canned beans, bagged beans.
I'm reminded of the old Saturday Night Live skit when John Belushi was still on the show, Scotch Boutique, where you had the store that only sold Scotch tape. And it's kind of weird stuff like that you just don't expect.
All I could think of when I saw it, and there's a picture, was beans, glorious beans.
There you go. Yep. Beans, glorious beans. I found a tea shop where they had all kinds of unique teas. I ordered a matcha latte there, but I also bought some jasmine tea to take home because it packs well.
The other bizarre things that I saw, and there's a picture, is a felt shop. And it was an elderly gentleman in a shop, and all they had was bolts of felt.
Felt for days.
Yeah, every color.
Every color in the world, yeah.
And one of the shops that I think we bought probably the most at for an individual shop next to Primark was Vincennes CHURROS, which we got a few gifts there.
Chocolates.
Primarily
chocolates. And they're 300 years old.
Yes.
They're selling 300-year-old chocolate there.
And that was the joke. We told TJ's brother that we got him 300-year-old chocolate.
Yeah, so we could see the look on his face when we handed it to him, like, this is 300 years old? There was one other attraction that we saw that we are going to talk about separately because it was also part of our day trip. We rented a car, something we've never done in Europe, and we drove it in Europe, something neither of us have ever done before.
Well, and I have to say, I had the more difficult portion.
You sure did. I'm not going to deny that. We went to see the Salvador Dali Museum. It was quite the drive to get there. We had to drive from Barcelona to the city of Figueres.
And that actually was easy.
Then from there, we had to drive to the city of, and I know I'm not going to say it right, so I'm just going to let you say it. Cadaqués, to see the birthplace and home of Salvador Dali.
Actually, Figueres is the birthplace.
Oh, okay.
The home where he lived from, I think he bought that building in the original portion of his home in 1929. Okay,
I stand corrected on that then. But you should know that I'm a huge Salvador Dali fan. Dali was the first artist whose work I ever really felt strongly influenced by. His work blew my mind when I was a young teenager and I saw it for the first time. I've been very interested in his artwork ever since. So to me, this was like a real kind of Mecca experience to go to the museum, first of all, that he helped design, and also to visit his home, which is now a museum. But before we talk about that too much, we have to mention the fact that we had to drive in Spain, drive in Europe for the first time. And I guess the first thing we'll say is the first thing we had to do once we rented the car was we had to drive it to where we were going to park it overnight because we got it the day before the road trip. We wanted to make sure we had the car, we were ready, we had our parking set up, we paid for an overnight parking area. We had to drive from the rental car to the parking. So we get in this car and we start to drive out, and you're the one driving. You are the one who was brave enough to actually drive in the city of Barcelona. We used our little navigator app to help us. And the thing is, what we did is, first of all, we used Google. We started to drive. You started to drive, and I'm trying to help. And I begin to notice that our app is telling us 20 minutes
to drive 3 blocks.
I'm like, what? 20 minutes? And then as it's giving us instructions, it's saying, take the crosswalk. And we're like, take the crosswalk? These are walking directions. And it's like, okay, no wonder we're having trouble. So this is when we discovered the difference between Google and Apple Maps. Google Maps, of course, told us everything in kilometers, which we're not as familiar with, which is what they use in Spain. The moment we switched to Apple Maps for driving directions, it translated everything to feet, which made it much easier for us to judge the actual distance they were talking about. And of course, now it was driving directions. So that was the first thing we learned.
Yes, that was a big help. But the other suggestion that I would give to anybody who's planning on doing a trip like this, especially if you're not familiar with driving in the country that you're in, or just to get acclimated with driving, rent the car from the airport.
Yeah.
Park it at the airport overnight and then leave in the morning. You know, take the airport bus for 20 minutes, go get the car, come back, leave from there.
The streets are very narrow. There's lots of one-way streets. There's lots of lights at odd areas. And it can be quite daunting if you're not used to it. It made LA traffic look easy.
The other thing is if you're going to do something like this, take a few taxi rides, because that helped me a lot to understand, kind of get a feel for the rules of the road.
Rules of the road, yeah. Yeah, and we had done that already. We had taken quite a few taxi rides at that point. Definitely make sure you've got your directions set to driving, not walking, because prior to that we had been walking and using the app for that. And we kept using Google for walking, and then we used Apple for driving. And especially since Apple converted everything to feet.
Yeah, it helped quite a bit.
Yeah, quite a bit, yeah. We want to get absorbed in the culture, but we didn't want to get that absorbed.
Other than driving in the city, the roads were clear and easy.
Outside of the city was a much easier time, definitely.
I have a whole new appreciation for traffic circles.
Your feeling was that traffic moved better because of circles and less traffic lights.
Yes, definitely.
On their highways, yeah. Okay, so that was the traveling. That was actually just the driving. Let's talk about the Salvador Dali Museum, which for me was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's so hard to describe it. It's as difficult to describe the Salvador Dali Museum, since it was designed by Dali, as it is to describe Sagrada Familia. And of course, we're showing pictures, but it's really hard to take it in with just the pictures alone.
Yeah, the pictures don't do it justice. You have to experience it.
I saw many, of course, paintings that I was familiar with, that I'd seen in books, saw them for the first time in real life. I saw many art installations that I've never seen, and paintings that I'd never seen before. Then from there, we drove to see his home, and we saw, of course, the Mediterranean Ocean, which is where he lived by, and it was just a beautiful. That alone was just beautiful.
It's right on the ocean.
Yeah, it was just beautiful to see that. We visited his home. The home now, of course, a much more intimate experience.
Yeah, and I believe his wife passed away in 1982, and when that happened, he walked out and never went back.
That's right.
It's a time capsule.
It is a time capsule of when he left it, and they've kept it up, and they've just made it a museum. This home is really unique. It's got this incredibly bizarre swimming pool. It's got little statues of the Michelin Man outside. It's got an egg that you can actually crawl into and take pictures of yourself coming out of it, which they let tourists do all the time.
You're hatching.
Yeah, you're hatching out of the egg. It is a fascinating trip. It's a guided tour. And while it wasn't as mind-blowing as the museum, it was more intimate, and it was more about the man himself.
You kind of got the whole picture by doing both.
I would say if you had to choose, do the museum if you have to choose between the two, but if you can do both, do both.
We didn't have to do the rental car. We wouldn't have done the rental car if we were just going to the museum.
We could have taken a train.
We would have taken a train. I think it would have been 20 or 30 euro maybe round trip.
Cheaper than renting the car.
Cheaper than renting the car by far.
But you only live once.
You know, you were such a huge fan, and I had seen video of it and knew that it was going to be good and interesting. And
at the end of the day, I'm glad we went.
Yeah,
I'm glad we went. And even though those first bits of driving were nerve-wracking,
you didn't do it.
It was still nerve-wracking being in the car with you. Trust me, it was still nerve-wracking. I was trying to help you. And there were nerve-wracking moments when we got to the city of Figueres, and I was driving. It was, and I'll admit, not as crazy as Barcelona, but I was driving in the city of Figueres from the highway to the museum, and yeah, I'll admit that was nerve-wracking. There was one point where you weren't looking, and you looked up, and no, you weren't looking, and suddenly I stopped suddenly because a woman darted out. And I remember it scared you because you didn't understand what was going on. I said, well, there's a woman coming out. I got to stop. So it was nerve-wracking. It had its moments.
Yeah.
But at any rate, though, this is not a competition.
No, it's not.
We're not trying to see who had to drive in the worst traffic. So that's kind of everything except one thing, and that's requirements to come home, coming back to the U.S. during COVID. And let's talk a little bit about what we had to do to get back into the U.S.
We had to take a COVID test to get back into the United States. So we bought the COVID test through the airline, took them in the hotel. It was a video chat that you did with the company. You had to scan a barcode, and you had to be on camera while you were doing the test.
And get your results.
They monitor as it's sitting there processing.
Yeah, to make sure it's legitimate.
You have to turn the camera on there.
Yeah.
But that being
said...
But
overall, it was easy.
It was super easy. It was efficient. It was quick. The people were really
nice.
Great.
And we did it from the convenience of the Airbnb we were staying at.
The one thing I will tell you is use your full name that you're traveling under when you register the test.
Yes.
And whatever name you're flying under, that's the name you want on that.
Yeah, because you did that, and you were able to get yours done quickly and easily. Because my name that I was traveling under and the name I registered on the test were different, I had to go back and update the record.
No nicknames is
no nicknames. I had to use because I used my nickname versus my full name. I had to go back, update their records, and then do it again. And then I didn't have to take the test again, but I had to just start the process over, so it took longer. So that's the one tip we're going to give on that. But otherwise, it was efficient.
It was about 20, 30 minutes to get it all done.
Yeah, very efficient and easy. I think much better than going to a clinic. We were able to do it in the comfort of our Airbnb that we were staying at, and
it was more cost effective as well. I think.
I agree, much more cost effective. And with that, we were able to just come back to the U.S. and come home, and that I think sums it up.
Yeah.
And that was our trip to Spain, to Barcelona, and we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And we'll see what country we go to next.
Yes, we will.
And thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like so the YouTube algorithm recognizes us. Be sure to click subscribe for more content. I don't talk about travel a lot on this channel, but hopefully more often in the future. I do talk a lot about music and popular culture here, so if you're interested in that, please click subscribe. And also smash the bell icon so you can know when there's new videos coming out and never miss a video. Want to thank my patron supporters for helping me make more videos. If you'd like to be a patron supporter, go to patreon.com/TGRTheOriginal. And everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening. Leave us your comments. Let us know what you think. And we hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.